Alright guys, I want to do a video for you kind of in response to a comment that had come across on our outcome-based training versus our technique-based training. And just kind of a quick summary, outcome-based training says get it done anyway, anyhow, doesn't matter as long as the outcome doesn't change. And technique-based training says take the time to learn how to properly do what it is you're going to do, learn the whys, the wherefores, things like this, so that when the situation arises, you will not only have all of the dick mentality or the sheer violence or raw aggressiveness that tends to accompany outcome-based training, but you will also have technique in addition to that. And basically, the comment that came across was from Jason Atkins, and he asked the question, how do you think this would relate to Kit Dale principle-based learning versus Galvayo drill-based learning methodology? And basically, the answer is, the question is sort of framed in such a way, what do I think about concept-based training versus drill-based training? Drill being repetitions and things like this. Which way to go? Honestly, it's both. We have to understand that from an instructor perspective, everybody is going to learn slightly differently. But the concept-based training system says these are the reasons why you do these things. I'm not going to necessarily tell you you have to do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Versus the drill method basically tells you step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then tells you to go off and basically practice that over and over and over and over to build in muscle memory. And we have to understand that you're talking about kind of two sides of the same coin, because in my opinion both are necessary. Now, first thing we need to go ahead and preface this conversation in saying is that I am not debating against Kit Dale, and I am not debating against Andrea Galvayo. I'm not debating against guys like Tony Blauer. I mean, looking at all of these individuals, myself included, these are professionals within the area of combatives, within the area of combative/combative sports, because some of these guys are just sport related. However, all are experienced in the subject matter and just have different approaches to go about it. So I don't want anybody to take what I say and say, oh, Kit Dale's an asshole or anything like that. It's not like that at all. We're talking about two different scientists, so to speak, looking at the same evidence and just coming up with different ways to be able to accomplish it. So let's just look at it from that perspective so nobody gets butthurt. But the idea is concept-based training versus drill-based training. Is it repetitions that causes you to learn and to retain a technique? Or is it learning the concept, learning the reasons why? And just to give you an example, let's just take a simple arm bar from the mount. So I'm in the mount position. I start off, I grab the back side of that elbow. I lift that elbow up, which elevates the shoulder. I bring my knee up underneath the shoulder. I rotate my hips. I hold the face, pass the leg over, drop back, and I get the arm bar. All right, now here's the thing. Drill-based training will have you sitting down and practicing that step by step by step, over and over and over again, building in those repetitions. However, concept-based training will tell you, look, I lift the elbow so that I can be underneath it, because the end result is I need to be underneath the elbow. Now, I may reach and grab the elbow that way. I may grab the sleeve on this side and pull up. I'm not going to tell you there's a right way and a wrong way to do the thing as long as you get the elbow up off the ground. By the same token, when I lift the shoulder, I want to get my knee in behind the shoulder so that when I drop back, my hips are close to the guy's arm and I don't have that gap between my butt and his shoulder. So the concept-based training will tell you the reasons why. Okay, I lift the shoulder so that when I fall in the right place. However, drill-based training will tell you, grab the elbow, make sure you lift not just the shoulder, or the elbow rather, but the shoulder as well. So we have to understand that both play an aspect in training for two reasons. Number one, different people learn differently. Okay, this is something that I'm not going to say has escaped the military, because the military has a whole new set of problems when they're training combatives. They have to train a mass of guys, and they have to do it in assembly line, kind of an industrial type format. So they have to go through all of this and do this training in as quick and efficient a manner as possible, even if some of the information doesn't stick within 30 or 40 or 50% of the individuals. If I can get 50% of the information to stick within 50% of the individuals, then I've got 25% of the people who have a good fundamental understanding of what it is that's going on. And let's face it, the guys who are going to typically be using combatives are not the guys who are in admin positions. So you're talking about grunts and things like this, and you're talking about what, 10%, if that? So if I can get 25% of the people who are going through a combatives program to retain the information that I'm teaching them, then that's a perfectly acceptable alternative for me. However, what you gain in retention, you sacrifice in time. So if I want a higher percentage rather than that 50% of 50%, that 25% I spoke of, if I want a higher percentage, that's going to require more focused training, which means you're going to have more focused instructors. Now, the instructor programs have the same problem. When instructors go through programs, for instance in the military combatives program, they too are produced on an assembly line method. Now they are done, it's done so to a greater degree of accuracy and focus and detail, but it's still done in an assembly line fashion. This is the reason why we have combatives manuals, is because somebody sat down, a subject matter expert, sat down and wrote a manual that says this is how it's done, and then he hands it down to the next guy and says, okay, teach this. Well, that guy, there's no assurance that that guy actually grasps the concepts. He can look at the pictures and he can see the steps, but he doesn't necessarily understand all the whys and wherefores to the depth that he may need to. So you have guys without a good, solid, fundamental understanding, without experience, teaching guys further down the line, and this is why you end up with 25%, and that's just a rough number. I have no idea what the percentage is. But basically, when we're looking at concept-based training, we have to understand that it's going to be based on the individual, because certain people are of an analytical mindset where I can go to them and I can explain the whys and the wherefores, and they can interpolate in the situation. They can go ahead and make changes. They can add in that extra step. They can modify things based on their body type, because their body type is going to be slightly different than mine. They can see that I lifted the elbow in order to lift the shoulder so I can get my knee up under there so that I can get my hip close to it. They can see that, but maybe their body type is not exactly like that. So they just intuitively go in and they duplicate the position, but maybe they do it with slightly different steps. Now, we also have to understand that as students are going through this, there's going to be changes. They are going to grow and evolve through the process. So typically when you see a white belt come in, this is why you see drill-based training still used, especially in larger schools, is because the instructor is teaching 150 guys. And that class is typically made up of everywhere from white belts to black belts. Typically, most Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools do not segregate classes, white through blue and then purple through black. There's some schools I've seen do it, but by and large, most don't. Most, it is a conglomeration of all of the students, because the black belts can use the white belts to practice positions that they're not overly confident with yet, and the white belts can pick the brains of the black belts in the middle of training. So there's a lot of feedback that's going back and forth there. So I made this kind of chart here, and I'm probably going to add one detail here, and we're going to call stress realism. Alright, so basically what we have here is we've got reps, repetition, and we've got stress realism. And ultimately the answer that I'm going to get when I look at this chart is going to be comfort or success. Now this is important when you're training, because ultimately, when it all boils down to it, if you're not comfortable with a position, or if you're not successful with a position, you lose confidence. Any position that I don't have confidence in decreases the chance of me actually using that position in an actual situation, or even in training. If I'm not comfortable doing an omoplata, then chances are I'm not going to try it when I'm going against somebody who is my equal or possibly even better. All right, so confidence plays a big role in training. This is also one of the reasons why a lot of martial arts instructors really kind of force on you, or really kind of impress on you, the fact that they can teach you information to be able to defend yourself within a relatively short amount of time, knowing that it's not exactly true, or at very least it's a partial truth. Because if they can embolden you with confidence, that is at least, although slightly deceptive, that is at least that much more confidence you will have to be able to execute their techniques. Because in panic, you're liable to not do anything. You're liable to freeze if you go into full panic mode. So basically what we have here is we got three different individuals. All right, we got somebody who is more physical, you know, kind of that brutish, gruntish, you know, not real deep as far as his strategy mindset and things like that. And this is, although it's some individuals throughout their training, this is most people when they first start training. So the further over into this graph that I get, the more successful they are in their particular, in executing a particular move. So the guy who comes in, who's just that brute, and you know, doesn't really have a whole lot of control of his body, doesn't really have that that confidence yet, you know, just, you know, he's that brand new guy who's coming in and training. Typically that guy is going to need more reps and less stress. Now when we practice position, we have to understand, we got to define some terms here. Practicing position is zero stress. This is what I do when I get in there and I actually practice a position on a willing partner. Or understand that this entire paradigm can also be applied to, let's say, firearms training. Okay, when you go out and you do some firearms training, typically your first day you go out there, you learn the function, the mechanics of the weapon, and then we start going through fundamentals like grip and sight picture, trigger control, things like this. But we're shooting on a static range that, you know, there's no feedback, there's no stress, there's nothing like that. It's just me sitting in front of a piece of paper. All right, zero stress. However, as you start getting more comfortable and as you start getting more confident, then we gradually start increasing the stress level. Now this is where having a good instructor comes in, because if an instructor is just coming in regurgitating information and he's not good at seeing what that particular student needs, then what's going to happen is you know, you're going to apply the wrong tool to the wrong individual. So if I'm teaching 150 different students, what I may do is I may explain the concepts for those more advanced guys, and I may actually go through the process of doing a drill-based system where I give them step-by-step methods. But then gradually what ends up happening is as I start seeing those new guys start to get confidence, and as I see their ability start to increase, then maybe I can apply less reps to them and start applying more stress to them. So we have one individual here. We have one individual here, another individual here, and another individual here. One is going to be that brutish guy that I spoke of. 3 is going to be that guy who is more strategic, analytically based, and stuff like this. This is going to be guys like Kit Dale. Okay? This is also going to be guys like myself. I have a tendency to focus more on concepts and stuff, but not to the neglect of the drill. Because like I've talked to you guys about in the past, we're talking about comprehension, apprehension, condition response. There are stages within that. The difference between getting from here to here is that comprehension, apprehension, condition response. So for example, if I were teaching Kit Dale and he's just a white belt, blue belt, whatever, and he's coming into my academy, what I'm not going to do is sit down with him and explain all of these concepts and stuff, because this is a completely foreign subject to him. He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand what I'm talking about when I talk about hip pressure. He doesn't understand what I'm talking about, the difference between close and tight. Okay, tight is when I'm squeezing the piss out of this guy. Close is when I'm just literally fitting on this guy like a glove. Okay, one, I'm expending energy. The other one, I'm forcing the other guy to expend energy. So there's a difference there, and that difference is pretty profound, but it's also not something that somebody who is brand new coming into the academy is really going to get. They're not going to get this on day one. So in answer to your question, kind of a long way about it, is concept-based training versus drill-based training, or is it more appropriate than drill-based training? The answer is yes and no. If the individual is able to actually duplicate what I'm doing and follow the steps, then maybe I'll go into greater depth with him. But gradually what I want to do is I want to increase that stress. So as his learning starts to come up, I'm giving him, more reps, and I see, man, he's really starting to get better. So now his stress, I'm upping his stress level, and he's starting to get better. Now he's going up again, more reps, getting better, more reps, and this is basically kind of a learning curve that a guy goes through. Now a good instructor, like I said, can guide this guy to this ultimate destination, and that's ultimately what his job is. It is not to just simply regurgitate information. Again, like I've talked to you guys in the past before, there is a difference between a teacher and an instructor. An instructor just tells you, do this, and he adds this arbitrarily. A teacher is looking at that student, seeing what he needs, upping the stress, lowering the stress, and watching that student go through the roller coaster ride till he gets to where he's going, and then ultimately yielding him the most successful student. So that's my thought on that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was confidence. And basically confidence, like I said, any move that I'm not confident in, I won't try. Okay? Especially in a high stress situation. But confidence is a combination, or is a product of rather, comfort and success, which is past success that I've had, times my reps, okay, which could include both good and bad reps. So times when I've tried that position and failed, and times when I've done it and succeeded. But also, it's a product of security as well. Now, by security, I'm not talking about physical security. I'm talking about how secure that individual is in that particular environment. If you've got an environment full of dickheads and headhunters who are going in and just manhandling people, that has a tendency to have a detrimental effect on security in that class, which means that other people who are coming in are not going to benefit from confidence. And the end result of that is going to be no confidence, no comfort and success. So as an instructor, you're looking at your students, you're gauging them. This is also why once class sizes get to a certain point, it starts to become very industrialized. Although it's great for business, it starts to become very industrialized and very unspecific, where it's more like a military type system, combative system, where you basically got guys who are just teaching a set curriculum as opposed to structuring and tailoring that curriculum based on the needs of the class. Remember, you guys who've been in the military, when you go in, you start clearing a malfunction, okay? In the beginning, it's tap, rack 3 times, go back at it. But later on, when you get up into higher levels, more specific, more focused training, then it's a matter of, okay, diagnose the problem. So you're checking the chamber. Is it a double feed? Is it, you got the case over your bolt, things like that. Do you have some sort of, malfunction in that respect? The round didn't eject. Is it just plain a frickin' a reload? So different clearance drills are going to depend on what the problem is. However, day one, they didn't go through the Three Little Kittens drill and tell you to diagnose one of 3 different types of problems. Day 1 they came in and they said, tap rack 3 times, go back into it. Okay? There's a reason for this. In the beginning, you need those reps to start gaining confidence in what you're doing. Later on, as you start to build up experience, as you start to get more familiar with what you're doing, then you can start going into concept-based training. I don't have a problem with explaining the concepts in the beginning, but you have to understand that most of the guys that you teach, it's going to go right over their head until they start to get comfortable and they start to develop an understanding of the vocabulary, of the feel, of the whole tempo of what's going on. So I hope that answers your questions. I thought it was a great question, and one that quite honestly needs to be addressed, because there's a whole lot of guys who are just out there basically regurgitating information. There's tons of instructors out there. There's very few teachers. So, all right, great question. You guys train hard.